Welcome to Fandom Power.
Hey, welcome to Fandom Power, and on this show, we've got a little something special for you. This is going to be our multi-part series as we take a look at the Mandalorian. So it's Fandom Power presents the Fandalorian, and tonight I'm joined here in studio by my recording partner, producer, editor, Andy.
Hello.
And I'm joined by my very dear friend, all the way out in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Hank McLaughlin.
Howdy, folks.
So yeah, I mean, we recorded some stuff for Fandom Power a couple of weeks ago over a couple sessions, and we really did a bit of a nosedive into Star Wars to kind of capture the essence of the whole thing. And I think one thing that really kind of came out of that was all of us on the panel really had an affection for what they're doing on Disney Plus with The Mandalorian, and that really kind of sparked this idea of, hey, maybe we can do a little riff on that, and we can do the Fandalorian as a weekly reaction show to season 2 coming out here October 30th. So that's next Friday, depending on, as the time of this recording. But you had a great idea, Hank. You kind of reached out and said, listen, is there any chance you'd want to do a sort of a preview episode, and we could go back and kind of
recap?
Yeah, we can recap season 1 and kind of riff on that a little bit and talk about
it made sense in my head, because I was like, we did touch on it a fair bit, and that was the general consensus among everyone, and that was kind of an eclectic panel that everybody was loving it. And I thought, what a good way to get a feel for what we're going to do, because we're going to have very little time to prepare.
Yeah, exactly.
And at the same time, there's so much to talk about in a full season that if we start referencing things from future episodes, as they air, so we can sort of get a lot of stuff out of the way and then concentrate on the new stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I think by this point, if you, as a viewer or a listener, if you have not seen season 1 of The Mandalorian by now, I cannot stress enough what you are missing.
You're depriving yourself.
I don't think you need to be a Star Wars fan.
No,
you really don't.
No, I would agree with you wholeheartedly on that. But we got a lot of material to get through tonight, so why don't we get right to it, and let's get some general thoughts on the table just right off the hop. What did we think of the season, sort of holistically as a whole?
Man, I mean, I described it to somebody who'd never seen it, and I was trying to get to watch it. A friend of mine, I was like, it's like if Sergio Leone directed Star Wars. It's like, it feels like a Clint Eastwood movie. It feels like Lone Wolf and Cub, like the way that Lucas borrowed from the Forbidden. Oh my goodness, gap there.
It'll come to you.
Yeah. So the way that Lucas borrowed from the Japanese films and stuff, so it was very reminiscent of that with the Lone Wolf and Cub comics and those Japanese movies, Shogun Assassin and stuff. And then I have to say that 5 seconds into it, it felt like Star Wars.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more on that point. Like even that weird, and to me it's not weird anymore, but that first time you heard that, and I'm like, oh yeah, I dig that. I was right there with it, and him standing there at the end of what looked like a dock, walking across that bleak ice field, and then stepping into that cantina, and just the sound of the irising door, the whoosh, and then him in the door and everyone looking, and I'm like, yep, it's Star Wars.
It's one of the things that ripped me out of the prequels a little bit, and as older now, I appreciate them a lot more.
Yeah.
But it was how clean everything was, and I understand it was the height of the Republic and all this good stuff, but if anything, things are more beat up now. Like we're after the war, right? And you can really see that. You get to see things like people are trepidatious about droids because of the Clone Wars.
Of course.
People are trepidatious of dealing with the Empire or the New Republic because there's just this massive conflict that they've just gone through, and it really shows on the skin of the series.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a war. I mean, really, if we go all the way back to the Clone War, I mean, the Clone War ends and there really isn't there's no break in between, and we go right into the Galactic Civil War with the Rebellion and the Empire.
That's right.
You know, so you're talking what, almost a decade continuously of war.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then just the the different factions and things vying for it, and then what you get to see in the Clone Wars is this faction that we've only heard about through the regular media. You get to see the Mandalorians.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is like super exciting, because like we have to go back a little bit and just sort of give kudos to Boba Fett, which is the reason that we're in love with this.
Of course
in the first place. I've had people on social media say, no, it's nothing like Boba Fett. You don't have to like Boba Fett to like the Mandalorian. Well, that's true, but it's the reason that when we saw that first image on that poster,
it
was the reason we went, oh wow.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
I do. I'm going to throw a little sideball here. I don't know if you remember back when Lucasfilm was pitching, and it might have, I don't know if it was Celebration or if it was one of the bigger conventions where they were pitching at the same time. They had a big cardboard standee up where it showed the title card for the Clone Wars, and then right underneath that there was an image of Boba Fett's helmet, and it was, we're announcing the Clone Wars, and we're announcing our live action Boba Fett project that never went anywhere. So to me, on some level, the Mandalorian is what spun out of that.
Yeah, I think so. It feels, I think you said it before, that it feels like a continuation of what Dave Filoni was doing with those animated series.
It sure does.
You can really feel, like I was looking through, doing my research, and I found that Jon Favreau wrote the bulk of the episodes.
Yeah.
But he must have sat with Filoni forever, because it has his pacing.
Absolutely.
It's got his timing.
Yeah.
Like that. When I first heard that the first episode was going to be like, I don't know, 22 minutes or something like that, I was like, oh, it's actually, I guess it's 39 minutes. Sorry. But I thought, oh man, I wanted an hour-long show, and I wasn't, I thought, like, how much can you pull off? But it has the cartoon pacing.
It really does.
It lets you tell a big story in a short
amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a comic book like that. It's a unique sort of narrative, and they employ it very well.
And of course, as a serialized show, you've got that continuity. Even though you have, multiple directors, you have a very tight cast, a core cast of characters, and your narrative, you don't have to tell it all inside of those 39 minutes, because you know that we're going to get to spend more time with these characters. And at least for season 1, it was 8 episodes, all roughly the same runtime. They were all in that 30, 35 to 45 minute kind of episodes.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is that, like, and this is the thing that Filoni has done so well, and even back to when he was working on the Last Airbender cartoon for Nickelodeon or whatever it was, is character development and making you really, really give a crap about these characters. And cartoons and this style of narrative, that you're interacting with these characters in snippets. There's no like 15-minute dialogue where they're explaining their entire path. So you're building little layers of characters, and he's friggin' fantastic at it.
Yes.
And apparently Jon Favreau is fantastic at it.
I think on some level that those two guys have a very, not only do they have an excellent professional relationship, I really think that, they're probably good buds, right? Like, they must be talking about this stuff outside of work, because
I get a Lennon and McCartney vibe.
Yeah, I really do too.
Like, there's a synergy there.
Like on that, the follow-up Disney show, The Gallery Making of, I really got that impression, when, they were talking about making the show, and they, I can't remember if it was Jon Favreau or Filoni or both of them in concert sort of referenced sort of their work on the Clone Wars and Jon Favreau's interest or his role at the time playing a Mandalorian, and how that really brought him, he was so into that character that he just wanted to know more, and, give me more and give me more. And I think, Filoni really was instrumental in sort of like, yeah, I'll give you everything you want. And hey, what if I pitch, for get you on a show?
Yeah, he does seem like, of all the producers, writers, directors that are involved, he seems like the big picture guy there. now.
I think so. I mean, like he's made. You can't tell me that he's not a fan in the same way that you or I or any other.
Absolutely.
No, I watch him talk in those gallery episodes about like how he feels about it. And
Yeah.
It's like listening to like it's the way I feel about it, but I can't put it into words sometimes.
He speaks,
and especially
with,
his little spiel on how on the Duel of the Fates.
Duel of the Fates, yeah.
It moved because I was like, yes, this guy gets Star Wars. Oh my God, this guy gets it.
There's a reverence there that is very, like we just did an episode last night where we did a generic episode on fandom and I made the joke about, the nerds we've won and but I was like, all these other people that say they're not into stuff, like don't kid yourself. Like if you can put on the jersey of your favorite sports team and like scream and yell at your TV, like,
hell yeah, face painters.
That's your fandom, right? And we can have this conversation as a couple of nerds who've embraced this right from the beginning. But here's a guy who speaks with a reverence that, the casual viewer probably can't relate to.
No, which is what I was saying during the other two episodes, is it's so nice to talk to somebody who feels this way about it and who knows as much as I do about it.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Like
I do.
You just can't just like talk to a guy at work.
No, you're right.
There's a lot of deer in the headlights.
Yeah, for sure there is.
Joe Public on the street.
Yeah. Like if you went back and if you were talking to somebody about it and he goes, hey, remember that episode of the Clone Wars when the Death Watch were overthrowing the government? And did you catch that one soldier whose helmet was a throwback and an homage to Robotech? Like not many people are going to pick up on that. What do you mean? Yeah, the guy with the 4 head lasers on his helmet. Yeah. So
yeah, exactly.
Reverence.
Reverence.
That's what that is.
That's the kind of thing.
Yeah. So let's dive into here and let's start breaking down the episodes and talk about sort of what we liked and how we feel about them. We're going to go all the way back to November 12th, 2019, Chapter 1, The Mandalorian, written by Jon Favreau, directed by Dave Filoni. It's 5 years after the fall of the Empire, and the unnamed Mandalorian bounty hunter shows up to get his latest bounty from character Grief Karga in the Bounty Hunters Guild, and takes an under-the-table job to go off-world, where he meets the client. And from there, we see our as of yet unnamed bounty hunter friend go off on this mission to bring back the asset, only to discover in one of the biggest television reveals that in fact it is a child of Yoda's species. So what a way to open with a bang.
I had sort of read something along those lines, but I heard that they were toying with maybe revealing the race, like the name of the race and stuff. I'd read that somewhere, but when I saw it, I was not expecting it.
No, me neither.
I can't even explain the joy.
It catches you off guard.
And the puppet is perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
And the fact that it's a puppet, man,
very much really like looking and knowing what, and I don't really know, but I mean, I know from what I've seen, something that, in the world of animatronics, there have been way more complex animatronic creatures in film and television before this one. But there is something about this one, whether because it's meant to be a child, I don't know, but it really just grabs you by the heart and just squeezes.
Oh yeah, it definitely does. And the other thing was that immediately they started hitting me with deep cuts. And it felt like, oh, this is for me as a super crazy hardcore fan. Yeah. To see the bounty he collects reference Life Day.
Yes.
To see the Razor Crest and to see Boba Fett's shock, rifle from the holiday special.
The holiday
and all
special,
these things.
Yeah.
And a lot of deep cuts, references to the Clone Wars, references to the Battle of Endor having been 5 years ago, and things of that nature were just like, I'm all in. I'm like, you got me.
I really appreciated seeing Carl Weathers, having not seen him like really since Happy Gilmore, and thought, Oh man, like he's still got it,
He
like,
had, if you've ever watched Arrested Development,
well, see, and
he's
I'm way out of
friggin'
touch with that.
fantastic in Arrested Development. He plays himself.
Oh wow.
He's an acting coach, and his whole thing is he goes to auditions and screenings and things, and just to eat the free food from the it's amazing.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
just Google some of the clips of him from that show, it's yeah. And I always thought he was like a really good actor compared to Sylvester Stallone in the
Yeah,
Rocky
yeah,
movie.
for sure he is.
I loved him in the Predator, the first Predator movie.
Yeah.
And so yeah, no, I was knocked out. And then he was amazing.
Yeah, he
Like,
really
he
was.
really does a good job as well, like he pulls it off. He's got this his delivery is fantastic.
I think it would have made a little bit more sense for me, and this isn't a big criticism, but we don't find out until like the final episode when Moff Gideon is calling him out, and he refers to him as a former magistrate. I'm like, oh, that's why he's got such a presence, I would have
Yeah.
liked to have known that. Not that it really matters, but it's like knowing that at the end, it's like, oh, that's why. Okay, now I get it. But you talk about deep cuts. Here's one for you. Let's really dive in on this for a second. When Mando goes into the client's office to take the job, and Dr. Pershing comes out from the side room there, and there's a little bit of a showdown there. Did you catch on Pershing's uniform that he's wearing the same patch that the clones wore on their uniforms in Attack of the Clones in the cloning center?
Really?
Yeah.
Like the Camino patch.
Yeah.
I did not.
I
Good,
didn't.
nice notice, sir.
Yeah. So, I mean, thinking from that perspective, and we know that Camino was shut down. The Emperor shut it down right after the war was over. But if there's some arm of that project still going, to me, it's very suggestive that
This is why they want that bounty so bad.
Yeah, for sure. So did they want the child? Does that play into the Emperor's plan to come back that we see later on in the sequel trilogy?
That certainly had me bubbling, like even not noticing that tidbit, which is actually super reinforcing a lot of the thoughts I had was that yes, like that with the exception of the movies, and there were some main points that were about clones, and certainly there was references in the first 3 movies that made our mouths water. But like, cloning was such a big part.
It was,
of the Star Wars saga. That it seemed sort of empirical to me that might be a clone of Yoda, not necessarily, because of how rare the species is, and how little George Lucas actually mandates that you can, or had mandated that you could even give information out about him. Like it was like
I got to tell you,
no-fly zone, if you will, for
up until 4 seconds ago when you said it, it had never even dawned on me that it might be a clone of Yoda.
Yeah, there's a few things like Yoda has one ear that turns down.
Yeah, quite a bit.
This thing has the same ear that turns down, but not always.
Right.
Just little things. His facial expression. I know it's the same species, but his facial expressions.
Yeah.
Especially when he's using the Force.
Yeah.
When he gets all calm and stuff,
the uplifted arm and the closing of the eyes is very reminiscent of Yoda.
And it's probably the tug at the heartstrings, but it leads me to believe that there's more. And knowing that how layered the Clone Wars was, and how like a lot of stuff they peeled it back, and it was what we were hoping for, but so much more. So that
for sure it is.
So I definitely was thinking clone a lot.
Yeah. What did you think of the client of Werner Herzog and his performance?
He's amazing in everything he does. He's terrifying. I don't ever want to meet him. He's terrifying. His delivery is impeccable, and I thought that was the German accent, and we associate it like at least in North America we associate it with the Nazi villains from like the Indiana Jones movies, and then all the sort of war movies from the black and white kind of World War II movies. And so George Lucas had said that there's a lot of World War II allegory to Star Wars, especially when he was writing it. So
for sure,
the German officer,
like
it was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and, I have to agree with you on that.
I really liked the scenes, and I don't even know if it was this episode, but his performance when he's talking about all the good things that the Empire is like, judged by any metric.
Right.
Is it a better world now that the Empire's gone? And it's like he's not lying.
No,
right?
it's on some level it's true.
His presence, his arrogance, he knows he's better than, like,
yeah.
And he knows that he's still, biding his time, hoping that the good fight will keep on fighting. And that's the funny thing about Star Wars. As kids, we were just like, but the Empire are the good guys politically.
Yeah, of course they are.
Right?
No,
like,
no villain thinks they're the villain.
That's the police. Like,
Yeah.
Be good, Billy. Listen to the police.
Yeah.
They'll drive you home after you, like, and so
every villain always thinks that they're in the right and everybody else is weird.
And I actually have an idea for one of the things I'm working on, and that's basically the title of the episode would be Rebel Alliance or Terrorist Organization.
Yeah, really.
One man's ceiling is another man's floor.
Oh, of course it is.
And so that's an interesting thought to explore. But Werner Herzog, man, fantastic, freaky villain, steps up to him, and there's no fear,
no.
And he commands a scene. Man, does he command it?
I have to agree with you. And then on some, like, skipping ahead a little bit towards the end of that first season, though, it's like, oh, they just did the prequel. They just prequel villained him by killing him. You have this like really compelling, oh, I want to see more of this guy, and then nope, he's done.
But they immediately, it was like they did the Indiana Jones idol swap, because they immediately give us.
Well, here's the bigger bad,
and so I'm super excited to see him develop too. So it was like.
Yeah, Giancarlo Esposito, who might as well be Mr. Bad Guy, given his last few credits.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And he wore it well too. We're getting a little off.
I know we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
So one thing that happened in this episode that I was like, oh, that's cool, and then later went on to realize that, oh, they're really, I don't know if they're doing this intentionally, but. Episode 1 starts the tradition of this series where every episode Mando gets shot at least once.
Yes.
If not multiple times per episode, and he lives to tell the tale.
And for me, that felt like Die Hard for me.
Yes.
Or Han Solo, the way that it's a dude. He's an every guy, and he's freaking lucky that he's got some kick-ass armor sometimes.
Yeah.
And even in the way he fist fights, even the way like his combat is like staccato. It's like the new Batman fighting.
Yeah, for sure.
It's awkward and it's brutal, and it really works. He's trying his heart out. And
so that turns the old trope of stormtroopers can't shoot kind of on its ear, because in this series, well, it turns out they actually can to some degree.
It's true. Those beat up stormtrooper uniforms.
Yeah.
And that, man, they were some of my favorite thing. Like see them yellowed.
Yeah.
To see, like, knowing, like, having tried to build a couple of them and having studied action figures like crazy and photographs and stuff, and seeing the pieces missing and noting and going, oh, that guy's like, he's missing a shoulder pauldron. Oh, that guy's his belt is missing a couple of pouches, and just the yellowing, the weathering, and these guys have been wearing that armor for money now for 5 years.
It's interesting that you talk about the feeling, like it feels like Star Wars, and specifically where armor is concerned. I love that Mando's armor, when we first meet him, is a hodgepodge. That it's not all, some of it's Beskar, but it's been painted, and he's piecemealed in other things. Like he's got the shore trooper gloves, and the one shin is a stormtrooper shin.
Yeah, he has a shore trooper pauldron too. That's right. An officer. It's got the blue stripe at the top.
Yeah,
and I also think that and you'll notice his palette is vaguely Boba Fett.
Yeah, and
I think that's to bridge the gap a little, like, to make it taste better in your mouth right away.
Yeah, for sure.
Before they go with the sort of the bright silver unpainted armor. Well,
and if that didn't do it for you, let's talk a little bit here about the Enclave. Because at one point, Mando goes underground where he goes to meet the armorer. And then there's this whole, I guess in a comic book, you'd call it a splash page, where he's walking down the hallway. And I've had this discussion with other fans, and it's like, all of the other Mandalorians that are in the Enclave, do they not represent every other version of Boba Fett we've ever seen, like the Kenner paint scheme, the more washed out prototype all white guy, like
Certainly saw them. Yeah, absolutely.
every paint scheme that a Boba Fett action figure has ever worn, it looked like it was in that scene of him walking down the hallway to the armor.
That scene especially was like, so they start to allude to, especially in the scene with Werner Herzog, there was the purge, like something horrible has been happened.
Yeah.
So it's nice to return the Beskar to the original owner and all this stuff. So something tragic has happened to Mandalore since we left them, sort of at the end of Rebels.
And oddly enough, that final season of Clone Wars that's aired earlier this year, even though it ties up the story elements of our main cast of Clone Wars, it doesn't really answer the question of what happened in the Siege of Mandalore. We don't really know 100% what happened.
That's right. And so that's like, they're very astute to make that a plot point and to let it ride. And then to see there's some rules now too with the don't take the helmet off thing.
Yeah, that's a new one
that didn't exist before. So this is a new Mandalorian cult. This is something that's, to see it not tied to a race, but now tied to.
Well, and this is it. I know when
the armor,
our other episode,
realistically. So then, do Boba Fett and Jango Fett then in the new paradigm become Mandalorian because they're
I don't know.
They're not by birth, right?
Right. And so this is where I get confused, because being a fan of the old EU but still a fan of the new canon and trying to keep track of who's who in the zoo, if I can say it that way, it's like, am I remembering this correctly? That Mandalorian at one time, it was a race. It wasn't a religion or a philosophy. They were people who lived on Mandalore. That's
right. And then the Clone Wars touched upon there was internal wars where sects had broke off and the Concord Dawn sect before there was some great cataclysm that destroyed Concord Dawn. And, and similarly with some sort of civil war. But and then you see them like factioning up during the Clone Wars. Like Maul is able to take over a huge faction of them relatively easily.
Yes.
And Maul, the armor has horns on her helmet.
Yeah, I noticed that too. And are we thinking that that's a throwback?
He left some influence there. I think that I don't think Filoni and Favreau are going to leave any sweater threads unpulled.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. Even if they don't unravel the whole thing, they're gonna tug in every direction, I think.
And to see them, like still having this reverence for the armor and to the actual building, the crafting of the armor, that scene, especially complete with his like sort of PTSD flashbacks of the Clone Wars, which we don't find out as the Clone Wars
not until much later. But
to see him have these flashbacks to his childhood and I guess also the idea that like he's a youngling, like that he was a child. As well. So that it brings the fact that it gives gravitas, the reason he's taking care of the child.
Well, I mean, even he goes so far as to make that overt gesture about giving some of the Beskar over to support the Foundlings, and it's like, oh, the Foundlings, what does that mean? Like, so have they really resorted to like our species is so on the brink that we've taken to just taking in anybody now and folding them into our culture?
Right. And so if we go shoot forward a little bit to the episode where we do find out that it's the super battle droid that's about to kill him. That's during the Clone Wars, assumedly. And that certainly looked like that was Death Watch.
You can't tell me that wasn't the Death Watch that rolled in and did
so that. The idea of Foundlings becoming Mandalorian charges, and then therefore Mandalorian it dates to the Clone Wars.
Sure it does.
So I'm very interested to see where they go with this. Don't take your helmet off.
Yeah.
Because it seems like a way. It seems like his kryptonite.
Yeah.
So and I think it might be a recurring theme of like successive attempts to get the helmet off in various not necessarily by a supervillain, but by successive events that so it does seem like his kryptonite.
In a way it does, doesn't it? At the same time though, and I mean, we can talk about this more as we go on, but like I had this discussion with my wife and she was really, really disappointed to learn that The Mandalorian was actually 3 actors and not just Pedro Pascal. But at the same time, I mean, how else do you do it? I mean, you've got to have that level of, I mean, his skill in combat is not necessarily, like your average, thespian is pulling off that kind of stuff. So
that's right.
But what I really, really, really appreciate about this character is how emotive a guy in a blank mask can really be.
It's pretty fantastic.
And I think that ties back into what you said about Filoni and his background coming from animation, where everything is voice driven. You know what I mean? Like you've got these guys in a booth doing their ADR, without even being able to see what it is that they're playing off of. So it has to come from somewhere. So I can, having Dave Filoni direct that first episode, maybe, and this is me just speculating, I think, but on some level it helps set the tone for Pedro Pascal's performance throughout the rest of the series.
And that was his first foray into live action, if I'm correct. Yeah.
Filoni's?
Yeah.
As far as I know, it is. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't looked to see if he's done other things.
I think that they talked about that in the gallery episodes.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, holy cow. If that's the first thing you touch, oh my God, I can't wait for the future.
So we know the child is the big reveal in this episode, but before we can get to the child, we have to meet a couple more characters. The first one is, I don't want to say liberated, but the no longer indentured Ugnaught, who we find out later on goes by the name of Queel.
Another deep cut for me. Just step back briefly for a second. I loved the cantina scenes.
Sure.
So there's a couple of cantina scenes because they were showing me the aliens. Like, I loved the Ugnaught as being a character, like, just the innocuous background character, and suddenly he's a main character, thinking, feeling, and we get a little story about how he was subjugated by the Empire, and you can go like, maybe that was one of the guys on Bespin, maybe that was the guy chucking around C-3PO's head, right? Yeah. And like when the Nikto and the Klaatu and stuff like that. So I was really super happy to see all the alien species. But then Nick Nolte, again, not the physical actor playing the role, so again, voice work coming into play. But Nick Nolte kicks the crap out of that.
If I'm not mistaken, the physical embodiment of Queel, I believe, is a woman.
Yeah, I can't recall the actress's name.
Yeah,
but you are correct. Yeah, it's just a rubber suit. It's low tech. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's very well done. But
portrayed by Misty Rosas.
Well, there you go. Misty Rosas.
Nice.
Excellent.
And just the mask looks like Nick Nolte. If Nick Nolte were not.
Yes. Or had half of his face.
I have to admit,
off.
When I heard he was cast, I was a little worried after his freak out during this filming in the Hulk. I was a little worried. But fantastic.
So then we have, we're leading up to the final confrontation, and of course, Mando's got to make his way into the stronghold, which is held by bandits, to get to the target, and he is met by our last character introduction for this episode, and arguably, kind of a scene stealer in the form of the bounty hunter droid IG-11.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, what a way to take a prop, because let's face it, in Empire, when you saw IG-88,
he was standing there.
He was a stick man. He stood there and he did nothing.
His head is actually a prop from one of the drink machines in the cantina
right
scene
off
from
the
A New Hope.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah, so they just repainted the actual prop. And built a whole robot around it.
So this
and having read the comics and some of the EU, like the IG units were involved. You get to see them in Clone Wars a little bit. So it was nice to have another one that was sentient
even
and
in
named.
I know that some of that stuff carries over to some of the stuff that I do, like in the tabletop, the miniature game in X-Wing. It's IG-88, his ship IG-2000 is a playable ship, and then there are 4 variations of IG-88, A, B, C, or D, right?
Oh wow!
Yeah. Each of them have a slightly different twist on their programming, but yeah. So I mean, he's not a singular droid per se, but
nice.
The whole idea of having this, take it on the nose, it's, it is a nod to IG-88, and I mean, Filoni has said that, and so has Favreau, but this is just one more reason why I kind of lean into the idea that Mandalorian is what the Boba Fett series was supposed to be. Like, I feel like that's one of the elements that was already decided before they started shooting, that they were going to include this, so imagine the story if it wasn't, Mando and IG-11. No, in fact, it's Boba Fett and IG-88 that are doing this.
Or especially considering, like, having sat down at a table with a few guys and tried to hack out big world-building story ideas, sometimes the littlest threads become the main focus. So especially with the talk of Boba Fett appearing in season 2, they could have really just had those water cooler conversations and done things backwards, really. Like had, what if Boba Fett's main adversary was a guy with a Yoda clone, or and then they
really.
went, wait, that's a way better story, or so it could be just turned on its head.
It's entirely possible. And I would expect that somewhere down the road here in the next season that we'll get some more light shed on that. I don't know if we'll get the full, this is where it's going, but I definitely think that, again, some of those sweater threads are going to get pulled just a little bit more.
No, absolutely. And I'm drooling.
And then, Mando goes and puts a blaster bolt through his head, and so ends the episode with Mando kind of staring there at the child and not really sure what he's going to do with it.
And the E.T. moment.
Yeah, exactly. The
E.T. moment. Again, those guys understand film.
The finger-to-finger moment.
And that it was such an E.T. moment for me.
Yeah.
Which is all about actually bonding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's like 3 seconds.
Yep.
And those characters bond. Boom.
Yep. So
yeah, no, that was powerful for me.
And then they roll the end credits, and I know it's not a big... I stayed right to the bitter end because that's, I prefer to do that.
Yeah.
I'm at the point in my life where I actually pay attention to credits.
Yes.
And you get this barrage of artwork, which is totally reminiscent of... It reminds me of when I was a kid, and one year for Christmas, I got the original Star Wars portfolio, which was a collection of glossy photo paper prints of some Macquarie art.
Oh yeah.
And you get this here's some concept art for the episode that you just watched, and I found that to be I just thought it was really cool.
No, absolutely. I've always been a fan of that. A big fan of Doug Chiang, who did all the prequels and a lot of the sequel work. And I've always loved that stuff. It's one of my favorite things about Rebels is that the whole thing is in a painterly Ralph McQuarrie style.
Yeah, in that style.
And so, it makes sense that those artists are the ones drawing those storyboards.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really good. And some of them are they vary. So some of the character development is slightly different, a different look to a character, and a few of them, things like that.
So fast forward a week later, November 15th, 2019, and we have chapter 2, and that is The Child, also written by Jon Favreau, this time around directed by Rick Famuyiwa. And this one starts out rather interestingly, where Mando is on his way back to the ship, and he gets ambushed by a group of Trandoshans.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I remember you and I had a conversation after the trailer about whether they were some sort of other kind of Trandoshan because they seem to have more fingers than Boss. I remember I was pausing, and it was blurry. I think they were from the Entertainment Weekly.
Yes. Yeah.
Photo shoots or something.
Yes.
I poured over that crap. But that was an awesome scene to see him I love his ragtag fighting style. I love the fact that he's vulnerable. I love the fact that I don't know this character yet, and I can legitimately worry.
You go back to that.
I feel like maybe if it was Boba Fett, he's got this sort of invulnerable, iconic thing going on already. So this guy that disconnection lets him be vulnerable. That to me,
that character is so shrouded in mystery that the legend of the character is almost bigger than the character itself.
Yes.
And I think the Mandalorian is a much more grounded variation of that, and you're going to see him. He's going to earn everything that he gets right in front of you.
Yeah, and his combat style is that. Yeah. It reminds me a lot of the Daredevil
again
Netflix fighting.
Just getting shot in every episode.
Yeah.
He takes a few on the nose in this fight, and there's this, he's not infallible, and he's very much the stakes are real for him. It's a live or die situation.
Right. And you get the sense that this is every day for him too.
Yeah, you really do.
And this is how he chooses to live his life, and it's every day is this.
Yeah, and I mean, he gets through that. And I mean, talk about everyday occurrences. I'm sure he wasn't expecting this one, something that probably doesn't happen every day, but he rolls up on the Razor Crest and it is being ransacked by Jawas.
Amazing. Amazing.
And I have all of this imagery of A New Hope in my head when the droids are, you know, in the belly of the sandcrawler. It's full of junk. And then all of that, you know, reputation that came with them as being filthy, dirty, you know, the EU stuff.
Scavengers.
So the EU stuff that really played them up as being these scavenging, I don't want to say thieves, but, you know, purveyors of technology that they
That's
are.
Right.
And then to see that realized was just, it was a bit of a thrill. That was a thrill.
I love to see them as an off-world species, you know?
Yeah.
You get the impression that they're only on Tatooine, and so that was fantastic. They're
and it turns out that
different. They have
they're
different colored
not.
eyes. That, you know,
They
version
do.
of the Jawa.
But here's one that, and this is a deep cut for the EU fans that might be listening. Is, you know, I think about the Sandcrawler, and in the old EU, they always talked about the Sandcrawlers being throwaway remnants of old mining operations.
Right.
And then to see the cockpit or the cabin of this thing, and it's like sized for a Jawa, and I'm
Amazing.
like, I was totally not. I was expecting like a kid standing on the seat holding on to the wheel. That's what I thought I was going to get, and then it's like, oh nope, I'm wrong.
That was my first favorite, and there have been a few, and it's been organic. I don't like comedy when it's forced. I found that a lot about the sequel trilogy, a lot of forced stuff.
Sure.
But when the Jawa looks over at him when he's in the cockpit with them and just Suga, and you just like they're all like, you know, they hit the bump and he smashes his head off the thing and they all giggle like that little scene there, amazing.
So the Razor Crest gets ransacked and is essentially left unusable, and now he doesn't know what to do. And Queel, who's lived there for long enough, comes up with a plan. He's like, well, you know, you can barter, you know, something back to get your parts back. Where Mando is just like, I can just go in there, kill everything, and take whatever I want. Yeah. Of course, you know, cooler heads prevail, and that isn't actually a good idea. So they come up with the idea that, you know, we'll barter for it, and Queel, as the mediator, establishes that there is a thing that they want. It turns out it's the egg of a mudhorn, and if you don't know what a mudhorn is, think woolly rhino. I guess that's the best way to put it. Yeah, woolly rhino. So Mandalore. Look at me getting ahead of myself.
He could be.
Yeah, really. Mando faces off the mudhorn and gets his butt handed to him. You know, he gets trounced, and we think that this is it for him. And lo and behold, we get our next giant reveal, and the child is using the Force.
Yeah, more than just Force sensitive.
Yeah.
More that, you know, like he's lifting an X-wing there.
Yeah.
And almost like instinctual, like
very much so.
Like somebody taught Yoda to do that.
Yeah, this kid just did it.
And I got the impression, and I don't know, maybe it's after that scene because when he's trying to heal him. That's
later on.
Yeah, it is.
He tries a couple of times, but they keep kind of like tapping his hand.
Yeah.
Like
He's
like, oh.
And so I thought that was like, oh, is he? Oh, is he? And then so when the thing just floats there.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got this like, I mean, Mando is clearly on his last legs. His chest plate is decimated. It's clearly no longer offering any form of protection. He's lost his blaster. He's down to just a vibroblade.
And there's such a great scene where he's committed. Is that the thing we were talking about before the show where you just like, okay, I'm resigned.
That's it.
And so he stands his ground, and he's so vulnerable. He's feeble in that moment.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's not backing down. He's a Mandalorian. And,
yeah, for sure.
You don't see a hero knocked into the mud like that and just dripping with dirt. So an amazing choice visually.
Yeah.
You know, to have the hero just ruined in that scene.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then so, you know, to have this big reveal moment and then have the child fall unconscious really leans into that idea that he is doing it without any training, and he is spontaneously just kind of making it happen, right? Like it's almost like a force of will kind of thing for him, you know?
And it rhymes with the scene again of the X-Wing because like even though Yoda does that and it's it's innocuous compared to what we see them do in the Clone Wars as Jedi.
Yes.
He's genuinely tired after it.
Yeah, he is.
And whether it's exasperation with Luke or physically tired,
yeah.
I think you start to see that using the Force can take a toll on you.
Yeah, for sure it can. So, getting your bacon saved by your fledgling little buddy there, and then all that for a big hairy egg. Turns out the Jawas just wanted some breakfast.
Oh, yeah, they just shove it right in, hoods and all. Stuga!
Even in that, I thought that was cool. I mean, there's those things as a kid where you watch Star Wars for the first time and you're like, oh, what does a Tusken Raider look like underneath his wraps? And what does a Jawa look like if you pull their hood down? And even though they didn't really explore that, the fact that they dove right into that egg and just started slopping it into their faces, I'm like, well, there really is something in there.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. They have access to mouths in there, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, such a small, in the framework of the storytelling, it's such a small window. I mean, arguably it's a little bit longer because there's the whole rebuilding process of Queel and Mando putting the ship back together, but such a short amount of storytelling with a lot of substance.
And it's that animated style pacing.
Yeah, exactly.
That lets you tell big stories in short periods of time.
Yeah.
I can't put my finger on it exactly, like I couldn't teach a course in it, but I know it when I see it. And
yeah.
This definitely has it.
So that pretty much brings us to the end of episode 2. Yeah, so Mando and Queel repair the ship, and Mando is able to leave along with the child. Oh, yes, and then we get the first incident of Baby Yoda playing with the gear shift.
Yeah, that's a great scene. He's still a child after all.
Yeah.
So we didn't touch upon just in the first episode, like they tell you how old he is.
Well, and doesn't that throw you off? Is why you're part of that whole reveal? Why it's so impactful is like, oh, he's 50 years old. Okay, right. So you're tracking an old man.
This is it, and then you see that it's him, and then my brain jumped to starting to figure out when he was born. Like 15 years before the Clone Wars.
Yeah, where does that fit in the bigger picture?
And so, yeah, he's well before the Camino cloning, that we're familiar with.
Yeah.
And so that, there's a lot of speculation that starts there.
But was he well before that? Because in episode 2 there, where Obi-Wan goes and checks, they've already been in production for quite a while.
That's true. I don't know if it's really...
of Sifo Dyas. That is very true.
Yeah.
That is very true. And they are referred to in Attack of the Clones as Camino cloners.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They're known for this.
Yeah. Dexter. They're cloners.
Yeah.
I'm very interested to see how this whole thing plays out, and I'm still kind of reeling from you suggesting that this might actually be a clone of Yoda. I said it before in our previous bigger overview episode of Star Wars that that it's one of the things that has remained a stalwart secret of Star Wars right from the beginning, is that we don't mention Yoda's species, and we don't make references to Yoda outside of Yaddle, I guess, who is just a nice little addition to say that there are more of them. But
at the same time, making the child a clone kind of cleans up that whole bit where Yoda would have strayed from the Force and did the same thing Anakin did. So if it's just a clone, Yoda never got down with Yaddle, and he's still on the side of Jedi.
But I never put that together that it could be an offspring of the two of them. I never. I guess maybe I'm just so.
I batted it around.
I take it on the nose that it is what it is.
But by doing that, you're saying that Yoda betrayed the Jedi code the same way Anakin did. Like, he knew love, he knew the
it's
comfort
entirely
of making
possible.
a family.
That's a good point.
It is.
I always thought that with the idea of him being a clone of Yoda lets you tell the stories about Yoda
when he's younger,
without ruining
what's already
Yoda
come before it. Yeah. There is that too, right? It'll be interesting to see how they choose to handle this, because again, he's 50 years old and he's still, what would we equate him to? A 1-year-old human child?
Yeah, he doesn't talk yet. He's not.
Yeah.
So what kids talk around 18 months or so?
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
he's in that range. Yeah, like a 1-year-old. And we know from that for 800 years have I taught Jedi. So we know that Yoda's 1,000 or so.
Yeah.
when we encounter him, right? So we know that, yeah. So we can sort of like do a little like linear deconstruction.
Yeah.
And try to figure that out.
Any other thoughts on episode 2?
Oh, they're so good. They just get better and better.
They do.
You know. Yeah.
I found that the show, by and large, it didn't really have. I think maybe of the 8 episodes, there might have been one where I was like, "Oh, this is kind of filler." I never was left with that feeling of like,
No.
like there wasn't purpose to drive the narrative forward.
No, yeah. I can't remember if it's episode 3, but when we get there, there's a scene in one of them where he's dealing with a barkeep lady.
Oh.
And forgive me, I don't know the name of the actress, but it just seemed like they paid this woman and they couldn't get out of it. It just something about her acting put me. I was just like, oh my goodness, like
maybe.
It's really deadpan. I apologize.
Maybe.
It's a great show.
Yeah, it is. It really is great.
You're listening to Fandom Power.
Episode 3, or Chapter 3, The Sin, written by Jon Favreau, directed by Deborah Chow. Her first episode, and I think she got 2 in season 1, but this is her first one. So Mandalore. I've got to stop saying that.
Mando.
Wow, Mando. I should just use his real name, but we haven't got there yet. We haven't been revealed yet. Mando comes back to Navarro and goes to collect the bounty on the child. So we get to meet the client one more time.
Yeah, and at this point, I wasn't convinced that, well, although it was, and I remember talking with my wife about this, like, although Baby Yoda was great and the chemistry was amazing, I wasn't convinced yet that this wasn't it for that.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, now we're seeing it just like he can cut and run, and we can move on with a different story. Maybe this is the end of that arc. He's he's going to turn him in. Like he certainly,
This is that whole like it's the how can I relate this in in Star Wars terms? This is that moment where Han Solo puts the money on the Millennium Falcon and flies away. Is he going to come back or not?
Good call.
Like that's really what we're talking about here. It's
the
like
moral crossroads.
Yeah, absolutely. When he goes to Grief Kargan, he's like, what are they going to do with it? And he's like, you know better than to ask that. No questions. That's the way, right?
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in the this is the way, but, the guild rules say, hey, no questions, right? Yeah, so that leads into arguably, I should say, before we get to that part, Mando has to go back to the Enclave because he gets paid, and he gets paid quite a handily sum, actually, of Beskar.
A Comtrol.
Yes, a Comtrol of Beskar.
From the Empire Strikes Back, in the background on Bespin.
From the vintage ice cream maker.
Look at the ice cream maker, yeah.
Yeah, so back into the underground to the Enclave, and we get some more time with the armorer, and we get a little bit more exposition sort of on Mando's lineage per se, I guess, when she says, was your signet revealed to you? Or he says something about the Mudhorn, and she suggests, well, that's your signet, and he's like, I didn't earn it. And then you have this whole piece where he explains why, I was helped by my enemy, but my enemy didn't know they were my enemy, which I found to be like way more philosophical than what I was expecting.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. But then we get to see the forging process, and that's really cool. We get to see the Beskar melted down and the whole new Geras, and really, virtually his entire suit is replaced in this episode, I think.
Yeah, I think there's one thigh pauldron that remains. Yeah,
it's that off-colored kind of reddish brown, which I like because it keeps the character that tie, like that's how we were introduced to him, and it keeps it that realism, Star Wars realism, but it keeps that connective tissue there.
But at the same time, moving him forward, showing you he is growing.
Yeah.
Not just on the outside, but
No, you're right.
reflective of what he's going through on the inside.
Yeah.
Right, even his armor is an ever evolving sort of process.
Yeah. And then he makes the judgment call. He just decides like, nope, I'm not satisfied with this. Like the idea of having that discussion with both the client and Grief Karga about what's going to happen, and they both tell him the same thing. Hey, you shouldn't ask. By now, it's like, okay, I can't let this happen. Whatever's going to happen, And I think this is where I didn't pick up on it right away, maybe because I was just the first watch through was just kind of superficially taking it in and just kind of enjoying the action beats and not really looking deeply at what was going on. But, there's some kind of kinship there between Mando and the child in the sense that, well, now the child is a foundling just like him. And as a foundling, especially having that, like you say, that PTSD flashback sequence where he keeps seeing that scene over and over again with his parents and then getting rescued by the Death Watch, I think there's something compelling him there to intervene, based on his own childhood. Yeah,
no, definitely it lends a lot of weight to like his past lends weight to the fact that he's connecting with this child, and he can't give himself up.
Yeah.
And so you really do see this character have heart and honor, like the way even in the first episode where he's honoring the bounty and not that you could obviously make more money off the bounty because the guy's got more money to set him free, but he's more concerned with honor.
Yeah.
And inevitably what's right. He's very much a good guy in a sort of anti-hero skin
in a morally gray world.
Yeah, good way.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads us to a little bit of a conflict with the client, and we get another one of those deep cuts, but we get another nod back to the classic trilogy. Actually, for the second time, when Mando goes up to the door and he bangs on the door, and the little greeter, the little eyeball droid that we all remember from Jabba's palace pops out and very much like I question, was that just a straight up recycling of the line from Return of the Jedi? Because the voice, the tone is so good. It's so close. Like, is that the actual line from Jedi? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I got the impression that might be on every door in the universe, and that's just the second time we've seen it.
Yeah,
like that's the go-to.
Funny that you say that.
Machine like throughout the galaxy.
That's
There's a commercial somewhere for that.
Yeah, it's like this is the doorbell.
yeah, that's bog standard doorbell for Star Wars Galaxy.
For sure. And of course, with it being the doorbell, that apparently, it's a good distraction to get yourself into a place. Just rip it out of the wall. If you rip it out of the wall, then the doors will open and people will come to look at what's going on, and then you can fight your way in.
Amazing.
So then we get back to a little bit more action with the stormtroopers who may or may not be able to shoot. And of course, Mando gets shot again.
Yeah, he takes it on the chin.
Well, you think, though, if these guys are the ones left over at the end, they're the ones that could shoot.
Yeah, for sure they could.
They made it.
Yeah, they definitely survived whatever the end of the war, for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, what was the line in the first episode about going in? Or no, that's later on. How many troopers are there? Four, but that's another scene.
I think in this episode, one of the troopers says to him, "We have you 4-1," and he says, "I like those odds."
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that was in the first episode.
Well, it might have been in the first episode. Yeah, when they pull guns on him.
They do, right. Yeah, because Pershing comes out from the side. He surprises him, and he thinks he's getting jumped. So Mando actually draws first.
That's right.
And then the troopers are like, "Hey, put your weapon down. Like, we got you 4-1. I like that." Yeah. So makes relatively short work, and we get to see some more of Mando's skills, both with his zip cord and his blaster skills, which are pretty good. I wouldn't say that he's the ultimate marksman, but he really comes across as somebody who's competent with a firearm in close spaces.
Very effective.
Yeah.
And then we get to see the probe droid.
Yes, but is it like a smaller version? It wasn't like the same. I don't remember it being the same size.
But it's definitely reminiscent of the Death Star probe droid. In
yes. Yeah. Sort of the interrogator droid.
The interrogator droid.
The little
we have
floating
ways of
ball.
making you talk.
The floating ball with the syringe on it.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
with
that
the
one.
syringe. It was like a medical facility. This guy seems genuinely concerned with the health and well-being of the creature.
Yeah.
The child.
Yeah, and oddly enough, Mando lets him live.
And that's sort of almost a throwback to Rogue One too, where we see that quite often the science divisions of the Empire are just citizens that have been, forced.
Well,
into
look at,
this.
Galen Erso, right? He's
Right,
just
exactly.
just
So
a guy.
that's kind of what I felt there.
Yeah.
That he had the child. That's not what we discussed when Werner Herzog's character tells him, like, you could bring him back dead if you want.
Yeah, if you haven't read it, and you probably have, Hank, is the Rogue One Catalyst, the little prequel story to Rogue One.
Yes.
Talks about a younger Galen Erso about how he's working on like clean energy technology, and that may be why he got recruited by the Empire.
Certainly.
Yeah. So we try to escape with the child, and again, it's still a bit of a fight to get out, and we finally get to this point where Mando gets surrounded, and he gets to use one of his new toys for the first time in the form of the little birds.
Nice.
Yeah, and so little birds go off, and 4 stormtroopers drop without ever getting a shot off, and that's a pretty.
I almost felt like, just for a second, and I loved the scene, but where she said, use them sparingly.
Oh, I know. And then the first time he uses them, I'm gonna go all out.
Yeah, you're using them on 4 stormtroopers, bro? Like, I could take 4 stormtroopers.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, no, it's still a very powerful.
2 episodes ago, you were talking about how you like those odds, and here you are on your knees. What are you, get up,
exactly,
get up, you.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, that's again very Clint Eastwood thing to do is to talk good smack.
Oh, for sure.
But then have to really bring it on when the chips are on the table.
Yeah.
Just one more point about the little birds.
Yeah.
Is that influenced like directly through Favreau and his ties to Iron Man?
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought of it at the time, but as soon as you say that, I'm instantly drawn back to that, and I know exactly the scene you're talking about too.
Good call. Like, that's really observant. Yeah.
Iron Man in the Middle East and the tanks.
That was Favreau's baby as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It reminded me of the Robotech missiles flying off.
Any anime missiles for that matter.
For sure, yeah.
Full missile salvo.
Yes.
But of course, Mando, being who he is, and now he's committed this course of action, is blissfully unaware that the word has gone out to the guild that he is now persona non grata, and so suddenly all the tracking fobs in possession of all the bounty hunters on Navarro start going off, and we sense that there's going to be a turning here.
He has committed the sin. And
so there's this wonderful sequence of Mando trying to get out of Navarro, and how he's just going to walk out and he's going to go to his ship and leave, and there's basically a peace offering there to let this resolve, peacefully, or it can be resolved with violence. And clearly we know how that went.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the big, again, if we use the comic book analogy, the big splash page is that the Enclave, after what you get this impression that they've been underground, like metaphorically and literally, for a long time, because they talk about only going up, to the street level one at a time, and only for brief periods of time, and that Mando's he's this outlier where he openly deals with the remnant of the Empire, and they don't like that. They've made that quite clear, because he has
certainly, and the armor even tells, like, if you get this armor, people are going to notice.
Yeah,
the other members of this guild are going to get jealous.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he has that with the heavy battle with armor guy, with the conflict with the.
So the Mandalorian heavy infantry, which is his action figure name,
yes,
but is Paz Vizsla.
Right, and Vizsla.
Yeah,
yes.
So voiced by Jon Favreau.
Yes.
And is a nod to his character from the Clone Wars.
I think he was in the armor.
Pre-Vizsla.
That's right.
Yeah. So we can assume, or we can infer, that Paz Vizsla is an ancestor or relative to Pre-Vizsla.
And certainly he has the blue sort of color scheme of Death Watch.
Yeah, on some level, I guess he does too, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So they have a little difference of opinion in the armory there that ends, with the armorer's wisdom of, well, this is the way, and have you ever removed your helmet? And no, and so, well, that's the way. And you get this, I get the feeling anyway that, he was begrudgingly putting his weapon down. I don't, if the armor hadn't have been there, I think it would have been a very different outcome.
No, it's true. And I also got the impression that like Vizsla was a pure Mandalorian, at least in his own eyes. Like you said, he was an outlier.
Yeah.
And therefore was like, had to prove himself extra.
Yeah, on some level, for sure. So we have this wonderful scene in Navarro in the town where he's trying to get to the Razor Crest, and it's quite literally like, run the gauntlet.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, you've got bounty hunters on both sides of the streets, lining
everyone in the
doors
sector
on the route. Yeah, really. And you've got this, Grief Karga, at the end of the street, basically saying, hey, man, you can hand it over and be on your way, or, you can have it the other way. And
that scene was also the best, sort of reminiscent of the best Western shootouts, like the way that there were guys in the rafters of buildings.
Yeah, exactly. Very,
ducking behind barrels and
yeah,
different greebles and things. It felt very Western.
And I really dug that aspect of the entire series. Really, like anytime there was a callback to those Western films, I always found them to be very entertaining.
It's some of my favorite stuff are the spaghetti westerns.
But I don't know if it was as exciting as, again, like so far we 3 episodes in, and you get this sort of, there's the big reveal at the end, and this. The culmination of this episode is the Enclave has basically come out from underground, and again in a big moment of, we're going to save your bacon, much like the child did in the episode before. The Enclave comes to his rescue, and we get to see this. It's really, I guess I would call it a childhood fantasy to see all these Mandalorians in live action. Yeah, I mean, on the wing, jetpacks firing. Guys are two-fisting blasters, and it's this crazy chaotic ballet of death, and it's
despite
beautiful to watch.
Their conflict, there's solidarity. Like at the end of the day, they're all Mandalorian.
Yeah, and in the fray, Mando is able to make it through. He has this little moment with the and I love, again, going back to the droid thing. He hops into that speeder truck, I guess you could call it, or speeder cart. He's like, drive. And the droid's like, beep, beep, boop, boop. And he's like, no, drive now. He points a blaster at him, and the droid's like, okay. And away they go. Yeah.
And doesn't Karga get shot in that fray?
I don't remember if he takes the round.
Beskar saves him.
That's at the very end, because in the gunfight, he uses the fray to sneak on board the Razor Crest.
That's right. My bad. You're right.
So he gets on the Razor Crest, and Mando essentially goes to take off, and you get that sense very much like in the Child, where Mando he has this sort of preternatural awareness of the Trandoshans.
Mm-hmm. He
has this awareness, and he stops and he turns to face Grief Karga, who's standing there, and pretty cool advancement in carbon freezing technology. Now it's not limited to just big industrial facilities. We can do it we can do it on a small freighter now. Yeah. So vent some carbon freeze, and there's that I guess the classic Western duel where it's like single shots, And yeah, as you say, he takes it in the chest, only to find out that he gets saved by the ingot of Beskar that he'd had in his inside pocket.
Yeah, it's sort of like foreshadowing.
Yeah. Lives to come back another day in another way. Yeah. So that was chapter 3. Yeah. So what we got now? Chapter 4 here. We're now coming into the end of November. It's hard to believe that it's been almost a full year since the season 1 debuted.
No, absolutely. And around this time in the show, there was a lot of hype going on about the Rise of Skywalker coming out.
Yeah, I guess that's true, isn't it?
Yeah, they were like sort of coming up simultaneously. they had that big toy release, that Triple Force Friday,
Oh,
when they
yeah,
released
yeah.
the Fallen Order game and
That's
all
right.
they had 3-pronged attack sort of,
Right.
and so there was a lot of hype, and this was just such high quality. I was just enamored by it. Like I was trying not to have such a high expectation.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't want to be hurt again, Disney. And man, I was super, 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 super satisfied. And
Yeah.
and the fact that the second episode didn't drop the ball,
Yeah.
and yeah, there was like I found myself like, I can't wait a week. Are you crazy? I
No,
can't wait
no.
a week.
I was, I think we're spoiled by this whole binge culture. So
No,
going
certainly.
back and watching a show getting doled out on a weekly schedule is a little bit frustrating for me now, but at the same time, it's pretty rewarding though. Come that Friday and it's like, oh, what's the new one
Yeah,
gonna
it's
be
a little
like?
emotional intelligence, like deferring your gratification a little bit. It's like when I was watching Lost, which is one of my favorite shows until
Yes.
the end of the how badly it ended. I could do a whole show on that.
Yeah.
But the fact that I waited a week between episodes with so much going on let me really chew on theories, let me really think deeply about it in a way that I could never have done if I just watched
No,
episode
no.
after episode after episode. So I kind of respect the fact like that I can let things marinate, especially if they're high quality.
Yeah. And I mean, the show has been nothing but quality.
Oh yeah,
So we get to chapter 4, Sanctuary, and this is the one that really was very much like the Kurosawa style, very much kind of a Seven Samurai vibe on this one.
certainly. Yeah, the main plot points.
Yeah, yeah. So landing on the forest planet of Sorgan with the realization that the entire Bounty Hunters Guild is going to be on his butt, he needs a place to shore up for a while and think about what his next move is going to be. And we're introduced to our next recurring cast member or character in the form of former Rebel shock trooper Cara Dune.
Amazing.
Yeah, and Cara Dune played by Gina Carano, former mixed martial artist, and she was in what was she in? Deadpool.
Yes.
Deadpool, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My wife loves it because for her, and especially also Brianna of Tarth, she really appreciates that women that look like women
Yeah.
and not Barbies
Yes.
are beautiful and sexy and strong.
Oh my
and,
God, yeah.
Amazingly well written characters.
Yeah.
So that's Lauren loves this character.
So Sanctuary, it's another Favreau written episode, and this one is done by Little Richie Cunningham. I mean Bryce Dallas Howard.
It's Opie's
Yeah.
daughter.
Opie Taylor. Opie Cunningham. Sorry. Yeah, so here we are hanging out on the planet Sorgan, and Mandalorian has a little tender moment where you wonder, is he going to settle down? I don't know about you.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I really got that impression that, there was an opportunity there for him to, hang up the Beskar, as it were, and bury that and have
He breaks a woman's heart in this episode.
Yeah. I like the fact that the parallels between this and the whole Seven Samurai, right down to the opening sequence where the villagers and the droids are working in what really looks like rice paddies.
Definitely.
And
definitely.
they're
the color palette.
Yeah.
That's another thing about the show. Each episode has a sort of a color palette, and in this one you really get to see it's the turquoises and blues.
Yeah.
And it's in the frogs. It's in their clothing. It's in the whatever they're harvesting. They use it to dye their clothes.
It's like space shrimp or
You
something.
really
It's
get a really
weird looking
organic
stuff,
sort
yeah.
of feel for it. And can we just say that the scene where Cara Dune and him first interact when they have that little fist fight, which is more of just like a wrestling match back and forth,
Yeah.
and they're so evenly matched.
Yeah.
And that scene where they pull their guns on one another, and it reminded me of, and this is also, I'm sort of speculating in the future, there might be something romantic going to go on here, because it reminded me of that scene from Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire one, where,
Oh yeah.
well, that one was a kiss, but Mando's upside down and she's not.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? It gave me that. And then the cut to the child with the bowl of soup
Yeah.
watching them. Fantastic timing and the pacing. Like, Yeah, what a great director.
Totally good.
Planting the seeds for a family unit later on.
Well, this is it too, and I mentioned this before, but going back to that, lone wolf and cub, or the analogy of Mando and son, it's Sanford and Son. No, we got Mando and Son. This is the episode where I really get that first impression of like, oh yeah, this is how it could be. Like they could just run around and have adventure of the week for however many seasons, and it would be cool because they're on the run, and as long as they're one step ahead of whoever's coming after them, this could work as a series.
Definitely, that's sort of where it took hold for me, and I realized that was their plan. This wasn't just a short arc with a cool character that we could enjoy, and it also like it allowed for deeper connections, like so that he really has the child's interest at heart. He wants to leave the child behind here.
Yeah.
He thinks this is the safest option. He knows that what he does for a living, and especially now that he doesn't know what he's doing for a living, is going to put the child in constant danger. Cara Dune has the line. She's like, "You could stay here, and you could just marry that widow.
Yeah, exactly.
Here. It looks like a pretty cool life.
Yeah.
You take your helmet off and throw it away."
So that planet, I have to assume on some level, there's more stories to be told on that planet, because how does a gang of thugs come into possession of an ATST chicken walker?
Heck yeah. And a gang of Klaatu thugs.
Yeah.
Heavy reference to the Return of the Jedi and Jabba's henchmen.
Yeah, exactly.
If you will. Yeah, and I again the toys spoiled that for me because of the Raider had come out.
Oh,
in the
really?
Vintage line with the Klaatu pirate or bandit.
See, maybe it's because I don't do 3 3/4 that I missed that, because I just wasn't paying attention.
It's a nice toy.
Is it?
Yeah, it's beautifully done. The vintage collection vehicles are amazing, actually. Yeah.
Did you put a red light in it to give it that evil eyes looking look?
No, I do have a little red LED in my 6-inch scale TIE fighter that I took a small mortgage out on my soul for.
I actually really appreciated that from a filmmaking perspective, how they took that, they illuminated that they kept the armor plates open, and It really did look like eyes, and that really made the ATST was no longer a vehicle, it was a character.
No, absolutely, and it worked. It moved like a Jurassic Park dinosaur, and you could feel like it emoted. It like tried to dip its toe in the water. It
struck fear into the hearts of those it was going after.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure. It gave me this vibe like, what if, what would a Star Wars, a horror sequence look like? That was kind of the vibe I was getting out of it.
Yeah, and we got a really good scene, which is atypical. It's more and more common now, but it's nice to see the woman takes charge. She's like, she does the cowboy thing. Give me your rifle. I know what to do here. Yeah, and that was a great scene.
Well, I mean, you have that whole sequence where they line up all the villagers when they decide that they're just gonna keep coming unless you actually stand up and do something. And so what?
That's right. Yeah. And you really do get to she's a rebel shock trooper.
Yeah.
Right, like she's
and he says that too, right? This is Cara Dune.
Stormtrooper.
Yeah, this is Cara Dune. She's a rebel shock trooper. She's gonna teach you. And it's like, oh, okay, that's awesome. Get the soldier to teach your peasants how to wield their farming implements, per se.
Again, another very Magnificent Seven-ish.
Vibe. Yeah, exactly. So, pretty cool episode. I think maybe that's the one where I'm like, this is the only one that it was kind of filler for me. Like, I liked it, but it was like, it was just a rest stop for him. And
I think it sets up the idea that there can't be any rest stops. So
maybe
you get to breathe for a sec. To realize that they can't ever breathe.
No, I think
especially
you're right
with the assassin. When the assassin shows up in that scene where you think, oh, did he just pick the kid off because of the way they shot it?
Yeah.
And Cara Dune happens to be the rescuer, the hero of the day there too. That I think it sets up the idea that there is no rest. That if he doesn't leave the child here, and if he goes off on his own, that this is life now. And like you said, this and it can work. As far as a story goes, like that, I would totally accept 10 seasons of watching him run around with the child and never learn a damn thing.
I would totally be That'd be pure eye candy for me, and I could live on that.
Yeah.
So that kind of, once we resolve the idea of the bandits, I guess our story kind of gets back on track. And then there's that, again, another judgment call. Like you say, you could just stay here. And he makes the decision. And I think maybe on some level he was ready to make that decision, but then another bounty hunter shows up and, Kara is able to.
I did feel like that was a heavy influence on his decision there. That,
yeah.
There is no rest for the wicked.
Yeah, exactly. And so with that, reminder that I'll never be, until this is over, nowhere that I go is going to be immune to the shit that I bring with it.
That's
so
right.
So there's that decision to leave.
And so wanting to protect the child is so genuine.
Yeah. At the expense of maybe having a slice of his own happiness. Hey, there's lots more to talk about, so join us next time as Fandom Power presents the Fandalorian Season 1 Recap, Part 2.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Fandom Power. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll be talking about another one of your favorite fandoms. Fandom Power is a Sawcast production.